National Treasury and the Human Sciences Research Council are currently holding a virtual launch of the Spatial Economic Activity Data Essay, or SEADSA. The initiative seeks to address the data gap about economic performance of cities and the wider economic geography of the country by leveraging tax and other administrative data sources. Ministers, including those of Finance, Trade and Industry and Competition, as well as Statistician-General Risenga Maluleke, are addressing the launch. Let's dip in now and listen in.
And others. Mr. Makhubu is the immediate past Chief Revenue Officer, a role in which he was responsible for this particular assignment for revenue forecasting, planning, trade and industrial statistics, as well as compliance program management. Mr. Makhubu has previously held senior position in ESCOM, Anglo-American, Unilever. He holds a qualification in engineering, commerce, and business administration, amongst others. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Makhubu in our midst. Over to you, sir.
Program Director, thank you very much for that introduction. My greetings to the Honorable Minister of Finance, the Minister of TTIC, and the Minister of COGTA. I also send my greetings to the member of the Diplomatic Corps that could be joining us, the executives from the National Treasury, mayors, CEOs that are joining us, as well as colleagues from Uniwider that are joining us in this particular platform. Ladies and gentlemen, I greet you. For us as SARS, it gives us great pleasure to participate in the spatial economic data, activity data launch today. We have come a long way indeed. Maybe before I go on, let me send my the apologies from our commissioner, who is currently in Brussels attending to World Customs Organization related matters, and he sends his warm welcome, warm greetings. I think it's important before we go on to indicate that SARS is currently pursuing a Vision 2024 and beyond, which is premised on creating a tax administration that is smart and modern, with unquestionable integrity, that is trusted and admired. And I think it's very important that one elucidate on the smart and modern tax administration that we are building, because I think at the core of this is the use of data and the ability to extend that use of data to the entire ecosystem. And therefore, as we seek to be smart and modern, the use of large data, the use of artificial intelligence, the use of machine learning becomes core and critical to the work that the South African Revenue Service continues to undertake. Program Director, I think it's important that I also elucidate on the fact that as a South African Revenue Service, we have set ourselves a key understanding that revolves around the fact that we do not only exist for ourselves, but we exist to serve a higher purpose. And that higher purpose is to enable the state through the work that we do. And therefore, when we participate in these partnerships, we do so with an understanding that our role is to ensure that higher purpose of enabling the state to deliver on its mandate. This said, it's important that we also reflect that our strategic objectives guide the work that we do at the South African Revenue Service, and particularly the fact that we have seen the use of data for the betterment of the entire ecosystem as one of the core aspects of the work that we do. In this regard, we have decided to embrace the partnership that we have between the Treasury and Uniwider and ourselves. And that partnership, as enshrined in the MOU that we currently have, allows for us, amongst other things, in the early stages of that partnership, to start transmitting data, tax data, to the National Treasury at the data lab that had been set at that particular facility. And I think this was a breakthrough in the partnership that we had, because it allows tax data at a micro level to be made available for research purposes as well as for policy development purposes. We take seriously the understanding that tax data becomes an enabling factor in as far as decisions around policy development, as well as research at large is done. So we continue to work in this partnership between ourselves, the National Treasury, and Uniwider under the auspices of the SA Tide program, which I'm sure will be spoken at length later on in this program. This said, Program Director and ladies and gentlemen, we have seen the use of cities level data to be quite important for us in as far as domestic resource mobilization is concerned. We do believe that the ability to collect taxes and ensure compliance and facilitate trade as key in our mandate objectives can only be done if we've got an understanding of the dynamics that relate to taxpayers, traders at a local, domestic, metropolitan level. And therefore, we participate in this particular program with an understanding that it will enable at a macro level the ability for us to participate in changing the landscape around policies and policy decisions that will be made in future. I must also stress, Program Director, that as SARS, we are buoyed by the fact that we are now on the SA Tide program on our phase number 2. If I just reflect on the importance of that relationship that we have had in the first phase that we participated in as the South African Revenue Service, we saw quite a number of research that came through utilizing spatial data, amongst others, to drive how we move forward as a tax administration to understand the underlying factors that influence economic activity that largely contributes to the taxes that we collect as a South African Revenue Service. We have seen the development of skills in the entire tax administration based on the relationship that we have had under the Southern African Towards Inclusive Economic Development Program, SA Tide in short. We continue to look forward to the second phase of this program that has just been launched in the prior year. And we believe that we'll be able to continue to work in this regard. It was only just in the early 2000s, Chair, where the issue of the integrated business register was conceptualized. And I recall that SARS, together with STATSA,
where people, systems, technology, and beyond the borders of our country will need to work together to ensure that we leave no one behind. Having said so, it will contribute to the 2030 development agenda, and of course, give rise to indicators that we need for our national development plan. But also further, it will give rise to indicators in the integrated indicator framework that we need at local government. The Agenda 2063 on the African front will also benefit a lot from this. So when we talk about the whole issue of this launch, it creates a lot more work, not only for other partners, but also for us as STATSA, particularly for us here at STATSA, in that it requires us to improve on the coordination mechanism and protocols that we are putting in place so that the framework for demand and supply of statistics can elevate the whole issue of user needs. Now, going forward, we need to be able to say that this launch will help us create value in using administrative data for policy making. And of course, it will be a potential for administrative data systems that we need to improve, not only at local government level, but even at higher levels as we collate this data to give us a national picture. And in this regard, it will assist the whole echelon of moving from national to local levels in terms of planning And in this regard, I need to say that the National Statistics System, which requires users and producers of statistics to work together, will help us move in a direction unparalleled as a nation. Now, as I conclude, Program Director, let me mention that always when we look at tax data and when we look at information, statistical information, we should not forget that it's not about the abstract numbers that we produce as a nation. There is life behind all those numbers. There is human life that matters the most. And if we can do it now for our nation, let other nations also benefit and learn from us going forward. I thank you.
Well, we come out of that where we are seeing the launch of SEADSA, which is the Spatial Economic Activity Data for South Africa, really addressing the data gap about economic performance of cities, right? According to the HSRC, there has been insufficient attention paid to the performance of South African cities, regions and local economies, partly because of a lack of credible data. So we're hoping that SEADSA will then be able to give us the economic activity of the various parts of our country so that we're able to measure national economic growth according to what's coming out of the various parts of our country.